The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone, to the Excel Shootout webinar. My name is Brandon Cook. I'll be your host for today. So just a few housekeeping notes before we begin. Today's session is being recorded. It will be uploaded to the Ningevity.com site and the Interdyne Artist site as well, so whichever one you want to go back and watch it on. We are using GoToWebinar today. If you have questions or comments during the webinar, open the GoToWebinar control panel by clicking on the orange arrow in the question pane and go ahead and type your question. For this webinar, all questions will be addressed at the end of each demo. So it's time for us to go into our first poll question.
All right, let's launch that. Ooh, Brandon and the other guys, it looks like overwhelmingly these are people who have never been to a shootout in person.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. I thought everyone had, but whew, that's exciting. We can show anything. Okay. Close that poll out.
All right. And we'll head over to our first presenter, Mike Palino.
Mark,
Sorry.
So, Linda, maybe we want to do just a 2-minute background so folks know where this is coming from?
Yep. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. So the Excel Shootout, let me go back to our main screen. This was just a wild haired idea about, 6-7 years ago. We started it at Convergences, and it was so popular, we got introduced into the GPUG summits as well. And what it is just a very quick, fast-paced version of a lot of Excel demos, things that you probably never knew existed. And so and then we have fun with it, and we created a competition with it. So we let the audience vote. Now, nobody's voting in today's session. We're just showing our favorite demos. But these are things that we have shown that, and we really do try to pick things that we think a lot of people don't know exist within Excel. And we show them very, very quickly. So you're probably going to want to watch this again later, but we're going to do it a little bit slower today. And we do this in rounds. So there's typically 4 rounds in each session. And sometimes they're 4 minutes and we talk as fast as we can. And we've also made it really fun for us by picking on each other. And
right. So in this one, we're going to try to cooperate a little bit more and maybe try to help people better understand each other's tips. But the goal was really to kind of step back a little with this and show off some of our favorites, maybe without the pressure of the competition. Is that fair?
That's fair. Yep. And so although Mark and I have been doing this since its inception, Shawn's been in on it the last couple of years. And I think we finally, although Jared was good with this too, he was a little bit too straight-laced. Shawn is just as goofy, wild, crazy, and egotistical as Mark and I are.
Egotistical.
Yes.
Awesome.
Hey, I know your family, and they're the ones that told me that. So, so that's a little bit about it. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to take our favorite demo or demos. I think Mark is showing a lot of features of one product, where Shawn and I are showing a lot of different little things about Excel. And we're going to demo for 12 minutes each. And we're going to open up the floor to questions and commentary with each other on cool ways that we can use, that people could use these features we're showing in a really practical approach. And so, yeah, like Mark said, we are working together this time. So, Mark, let's go ahead and let you introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Mark Palino. I'm the Director of Client Services for FastPath. I'm also a certified public accountant and a bunch of other kind of funny letters after my name. And we're going to have some fun with Excel today, I think. And come visit me at dynamicaccounting.net and learn all kinds of stuff about Dynamics GP.
And you also have a really cool Excel product that you sell.
I do. This is one of my favorites. So this is historical reporting inside of Excel. So if you ever tried to get the historical age trial balance from AR or AP into Excel, it's awful. It's painful. It's ugly. You got to do a ton of cleanup. So this is just a really simple way. You actually go into Excel, run the report. The results are dumped into Excel. Really easy to get that data, especially if you need it for auditors or your bank or management or those sorts of things. It works really well, and it costs about as much as 2 consulting hours. So it's not something that's particularly expensive.
And the last slide before Brandon puts the timer on.
And I've got a couple of books, lots of books around Dynamics GP security for 2018 and 2016. Belinda and I have written a couple together. And if you just hate all this Dynamics GP stuff, but you still have to use it for work, then I got a couple of books on fiction where we kill a lot of people and it'll make you feel better.
Yeah, just don't read Death from Above on an airplane.
Oh, come on.
And actually, I enjoyed Woodburger so much that when I went up to Portland to the jet office, Mike was with me, and he was laughing because I bought Mark a refrigerator magnet of a Sasquatch. All right, so Mark,
it's sitting on my office fridge right here, Belinda.
I'm going to make you the presenter, and Brandon, start the clock.
All right, so 1 second here. Let's see if you can share my screen. All right, you should see a black screen with a couple of bits on it at this point in time.
Roger that.
So I'm going to grab a budget inquiry here, and essentially this is the budgets from Dynamics GP, where it when you export a budget and users fill in the amounts and then you import it in, this is that sheet. So there's nothing particularly special about it except that that's what that is, and it's a good example for what I want to show. And I want to spend a couple minutes with the Inquire tool around Excel. And this tool is relatively new. It came in with Excel 2013. It was a download add in there. It's included with future versions. You do have to have Pro Plus. I ran into a scenario the other day where a personal license for Microsoft 365 did not turn on Inquire. A corporate license did. So there can be some oddities there, but it should be in the versions that most of you have. The idea with the Inquire tool is it really lets you manage those spreadsheets. I find myself building a lot of spreadsheets for different things. Sometimes they're heavy analysis, so I want to make sure that those numbers are right and the calculations are right because we're going to make business decisions off of them. The other day, I built a pricing calculator. So you put in a bunch of information, pull different levers, and it changes how the pricing matrix is calculated. Again, you want that to be right because you don't want to be sending out incorrect information about pricing to people. So the cool thing about Inquire is it helps you manage all of those pieces. And there's a couple of components to it. The first one is the workbook analysis. This lets you document everything in your workbook. So I'm going to do this really fast. This is the nice part about having 12 minutes is I can actually make this work, hopefully. So it just takes a second. I'm going to do everything. You don't have to, but I've checked everything. We'll export this really fast. And the other cool thing about Inquire is it uses Excel to analyze Excel. And in some cases, it uses Excel to analyze Excel, and then you can dump the analysis back to Excel. So it gets to be very meta that way. Like the Russian nesting dolls of Excel. So I'm going to load this export file. And so here's my analysis. We see information about my sheet was created by, modified, any of those pieces, and I've got a spot for reviewer comments here. We've got linked workbooks, all kinds of other links. I don't have any data connections, but they'll show here. Visible sheets is pretty cool. Hidden sheets, so I have a hidden sheet, and then very hidden sheets. And so if we get a minute, I'll tell you about very hidden sheets and how to very hide a sheet is kind of a bonus thing. But all of your formulas are here, so you're able to look at all of those, the arrays, and you're able to document all of these pieces. There's just a pile of things here. If you're working with a mission-critical spreadsheet, this becomes hugely helpful because you're able to document and explain kind of what's in this sheet and have a separate set of documentation for it. So the other big thing, well, there's a couple of things. So let's look at workbook relationships here. So I can look at this and I can see how my workbook is related to other workbooks. In this case, it's related to Inquiry 2, so we'll see that pop up here in a second. Machines run a little slow today. We see that those items are connected there. And worksheet relationships are going to show me the relationships among the worksheets in this particular workbook. And so we'll see here that test, and we'll see then my hidden sheet, and I think even my very hidden sheet pops up here. Yep, so sheet 2 is my very hidden sheet. You'll see it's not really connected to anything. It's just in the workbook, whereas these are actually test and sheet 1 are actually connected to each other there. And then same thing with cell relationships. I don't have any at this point in time, but cell relationships would show you how the different cells are connected. When I select a particular cell, if it has connections into other ones, it'll show you those specific connections. The best part about this is compare, though. So I'm going to open budget 2. This is kind of a common scenario where I've created a spreadsheet, folks go and make changes to that spreadsheet, and what I really need to do is understand those changes. So I have budget inquiry 1 and 2 open. I'm going to go open up 1 again here, and we're going to compare files, and we'll swap those. So we're going to compare 1 to 2. Just save that. And it's going to lay them out side by side. So 1 is on the left, 2 is on the right, and all of the differences are highlighted. And you can see down here in the left that the type of difference gets a different color. So entered values are green, formulas are purple, a couple of other different options, but I've got mostly those. So in this case, let's pick on cell D6 here, 54092 and 15 cents. Versus negative 54092 and 0 cents. That's the kind of thing that if you're just eyeballing this, you are not going to see those kinds of differences. Even something simple as D11, $500 versus $0. If you're just skimming through that, that's easy to miss. There's a lot of numbers on this sheet. There's a lot of zeros, so it's those items just don't stand out. And I can see then with the colors what the differences are. They get documented in the middle. So in the case of, let's pick on D5 here. So if I'm looking at D5, it's just a value. And in the other sheet, it's actually a formula. And I can display this. If I come up here and hit show formulas, I can actually see the difference. So here it was just an entered value, and here it's actually a formula. And that also shows down here in the center area, we can see these are different items. They were a value, and then in here, they're formulas. When we get to the value that was changed, I see that I can see the differences where someone keyed a different value. And then based on that, I see how some of the calculations have changed based on those value changes. And then the chart over here on the right is going to show me the types of changes. It would be nice if these colors corresponded to the colors on the left, but they really don't. So you just have to look here. So calculated values, looks like I had 11 changes to calculated values. I had 2 changes to entered values. Yep, that matches the piece in the middle. These 2 items were changed here. 6 formula changes and a couple of structural changes in the way that things were built. So the cool thing is once I have done this, then I can get a feel for the differences in my spreadsheet. I can still, again, export this back to Excel, and so I can export out all of the analysis changes that I've seen and have a spreadsheet with those particular pieces. I can also copy them out to the clipboard. A really good use case if I've sent out a bunch of budget spreadsheets, folks have made their changes and they've come change something inappropriate. Or maybe we asked them not to touch a particular area and they did, then you've got the ability to see what all of those changes were. And I know from talking to Microsoft's financial reporting team, I went and checked my notes before this, they have 18 Excel spreadsheets that are in scope for financial reporting. So they're part of their SEC reporting package. And they actually use Inquire to manage those spreadsheets. What happens is they'll complete a spreadsheet for a month and they'll lock it down. And when the next month comes, they'll make a copy of that, make all of the changes for the new month. So for example, December to January. So January, they would make all of the changes. And then they would use Inquire to show the changes from December to January to document each of those changes and provide an explanation of where differences are coming from month to month. So the Microsoft team actually uses this as a form of an auditing tool for spreadsheets that they have inside or in scope for financial reporting. The last little bits here are the ability to clean excess formatting. So if you've ever had someone maybe come up here and highlight an entire sheet and drop a format in the entire sheet, so it's all the way out to the right and all million rows down, that can make your spreadsheet quite a bit bigger. Can also make it behave funny sometimes. Clean excess formatting will remove all of that formatting in the areas where there's not other items, so where you don't have formulas or values or that sort of thing. The Microsoft team does recommend making a copy before you do that. In a few oddball cases, clean excess formatting can actually make your sheet bigger, but most of the time it makes your sheet smaller. If it does make it bigger, it's something weird internal in Excel, and there's no way to undo that, which is why they recommend making a copy. But most of the time, it's going to make your workbook smaller and easier to manage. And then the last piece here, there is a full help for all of this, describing what these individual items do. And then workbook passwords is if you're working with worksheets that have passwords in them, you can actually store them in here. And so then when Inquire pulls up a sheet, you don't have to go and key that password in and manage it. It'll actually pass that through in the background. So if you're working with those lockdown sheets, you've got the ability to do that. So I'm going to take 1 minute and show you very hidden sheets. A hidden sheet here, you do unhide, and I can see there's my hidden sheet, sheet 1. Still can't see my very hidden sheet, sheet 2. If I hop into the developer area, this is where the macros are, and grab Visual Basic. This is not a VBA. This is not an XLSM for a macro spreadsheet. It's just a regular spreadsheet, but I can come here and mess with this. And so if I select sheet 2, which is my, should be sheet 2 there, I see here the property here for visible is set to very hidden. So I can actually change that and set it to visible. And that is then going to make that particular sheet visible. Let's save that. I don't have to have an XM. So there's my sheet 2. I don't have to have a macro or anything to make that happen. I just have to get to the developer window. If you really want to make sure that folks can't unhide a sheet, that's the best way to do it. So that's my bonus tip, and I think I'm about done.
That is hysterical. That very hidden sheet. That's such a funny name.
It is a funny name.
Right, very hidden, very hidden.
Now, can you make something very, very hidden?
No, you've only got the 3 levels, unfortunately.
I love Inquire, and the example you're showing with budgets is such an amazing example to use, because if you were to create these budgets and then send them out to department heads for them to populate, and then you get them back, you might want to know, what did they change? You know,
it's true, because people have
Very
a tendency
cool.
to do weird things to spreadsheets. You can tell them don't touch anything, and they'll still add rows and columns and do all kinds of strange stuff. And so being able to see that can be hugely helpful.
that's for sure. That's for sure. And the fact that, can you go back to the compare where you're comparing to? I love that you could actually see if somebody alters a budget or alters a formula, or puts a formula in when there was a value, or takes a formula away if there was a value. I think that is, and that is color coded. I think that's pretty darn awesome, because otherwise it's just so many numbers on the screen. It's really hard to tell what was changed. So.
Right, and you try to lock down cells sometimes, but if you miss one, and instead of putting a value in a particular cell and letting it flow through, someone just changes a cell that has a formula in it, that can break the sheet all the way through and end up with wrong numbers there, especially when you're talking about pricing or analysis or something where I want to put something in an area and let it flow all the way through. if someone changes those numbers in the middle of that result, it can really be ugly to try to find and fix.
Mm-hmm. Looking at that in the green where it has like five in the middle where it has like 500.
Yep.
I wonder. I mean, is what was entered actually 500 with no decimal places? Is that why it shows that way?
So, I'm not 100% sure of that. That's one of the things I don't have but that does seem right, because down at the bottom, these are changes in calculations.
Mm-hmm.
And so this appears to be what the actual full value is behind the scenes,
Mm-hmm.
rather than the formatted value, which is maybe that's what that is the unformatted value versus the formatted value.
I never noticed that before. That's pretty cool. Do you have any customers using this? Do you know of?
Not off the top of my head, but I don't always hear about that either.
Yeah. Yep. Cool.
I've used this once before with I like to defer blame, but it was a spreadsheet that I just kind of copied from one month to the next, and I was trying to update some of the formulas, and I just couldn't figure out where I went wrong, and it was too late to go back to the original file, but using the Inquire was able to help me figure out which formula I had wrong. Very cool stuff.
Yeah, and you make a good point there, Shawn. With the new Excel, autosave is automatically turned on. So as you're doing some of these things, especially if you're using that clear the cells, you would probably want to turn that off before you the autosave. But that's a cool feature too, because frequently you can end up, if someone's made a mistake somehow, you could end up with an Excel table that has hundreds or thousands of blank rows, and it arbitrarily increases the size of your data. And if you try to use it in something like, well, any kind of reporting tool at all, you're going to be bringing in a lot of blank rows. So,
well, and I've come into I've saved a spreadsheet off and gone, why is this sheet so big? You go to email it to somebody and it's just way too big to email. And you're like, there's not that much in it. And then you realize that the formatting got applied across the entire sheet. So instead of, your little grid having boxes around it, every cell in the sheet now has borders around it.
Great.
And so you've just blown out the size of your spreadsheet for no good reason. So clean excess formatting works really well for cleaning up those kinds of things.
So if Microsoft is...
Plus you could just...
Go ahead, Shawn.
Plus you could just leave this open when your boss comes by, and it'll make you look really, really smart.
Oh, yeah. It looks and concentrate really hard, and they might just go away.
Oh, that's pretty funny. So if Microsoft is using Excel with a bunch of spreadsheets for their numbers, and they're using this, I would bet there's a pretty good chance that they actually created this to make their own work easier for their financials.
They certainly may have. Microsoft owns a lot of companies, and they don't all use the same ERP system. So that may be why they've got some items that are in scope, is that they're collecting some data from different places. And it's ending up as a spreadsheet before it ends up in the financial statements. So, but yeah, it certainly could have been built initially for internal use.
And one of the things you can do right on this particular screen that you're looking at, in the box in the bottom left, you can unselect all of them and then select just one particular area, and you could see just the changes that were done like that. That can also help you figure out what's going on too.
Especially if there's been a lot of changes and you're happy with most of them, but you're trying to focus on something. I think that's a fantastic option.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Pretty cool stuff. Nito Torpedo. I don't see any questions. I think everyone's mouth is hanging open. Yeah. Where can they get this on their Excel?
So it should already be included. If it is not, then the place to check is here in File and Options. It is technically an add-in. It's an included add-in, so there's nothing else you have to do to get it. And then it's a COM add-in. So here in the COM add-in section, once I worked through my licensing issue, then it was right there, and I just checked the box, and it was good to go.
Cool.
But you definitely need Professional Plus. And for most folks with a D365 license to their company, they're going to have Professional Plus.
You mean Office 365 license?
I'm sorry, Office 365, yes. Too many 365s.
Yes, that's for sure. Cool. All right. I don't see any additional questions or comments. So from the attendees, Shawn, anything you want to add before we move on?
No, cool stuff. You know, for the folks who haven't seen the Shootout before, the way it works, segments, or maybe even 4-minute segments. So having a good amount of time, Mark, I'm sure was nice to be able to show this from start to finish. It's a very, very cool feature. I'm glad you shared it.
Thanks. Yeah, and when we do the short ones, I'll usually just pick one part of this. So being able to show the whole thing was really a lot of fun.
Yeah, and then also normally the next person up starts demeaning what you just saw from the last demo, and it talks about why theirs is better. So it's nice to be on this end and say, yeah, I love this. This really is one of my favorite things about Excel, and I love it. I've demoed it a lot myself, so cool. Oh, that cracks me up. All right, I shouldn't be entertained so easily. I'm going to switch back to, I know, right? I'm going to switch back to my screen, to the slide deck. And next up is me. So this is me, Belinda Allen. You recognize the 2 books you see there. These are the ones that Mark and I worked on together. And of course, the green one on the left has a little bit of introduction to Power BI and introduction to Jet Reports. I had to do Power BI, no surprise to anybody. But I am the Business Intelligence and Training Program Managers for Ingevity, one of the hosts of today. And Excel is one of my first and real pieces of software I fell in love with. I just absolutely love it. I've got a couple blogs, one for GP, Belinda the GPCSI, and one I'm trying to make myself get going on a little more, BI Belinda. I am a Microsoft MVP for Power BI, no longer for GP, but for Power BI. For those of you who are in the Tampa area, I'll actually be at the Power Platform World Tour. You should join us, so that'll be a lot of fun. And the 3 of us actually have our own podcast, which life got in the way. We're getting it going again very any day now. The next one will be uploaded, I promise. The guys are waiting on me, so now I've committed. I have it in a recording where I am committed to that. So the news about Belinda going on so far, I have a new Twitter handle. I got rid of my Belinda the GPCSI. I am now Ms. Belinda Allen. New year, new me. And the biggest thing going on in my life right now has to do with our cloud version of Power GP Online. We are bringing a lot of our really cool tools into the private cloud. So I just wanted to mention that. So that's pretty exciting. All right, Brandon, you ready to start timing me?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Okay, so the first thing that I want to show you, this is a demo I did in a 4-minute round in Reno. And I remember because a couple of things in here, Mark just kept shaking his head. He's like, I can't believe you didn't show me some of these things ahead of time. So I'm like, sorry. And one of them is the ability for Office products to speak to you. And so a lot of times, if you're like me, you don't have an adding machine on your desk anymore, and you might use Excel to add your numbers together. And if you do that, you can highlight what you wanted to read, and you could add a speak cell.
$142.30.
Can you guys hear that okay?
$103.79.
Yep.
So you could get it to read to you,
$2,500.
which is pretty cool.
$1,132.53.
To get this on your screen, what you're going to do, and hopefully I will keep this right. All right, you're going to click on this little quick access bar right at the top, and you're going to go to more commands. And then from more commands, you're going to want to I'm trying not to get everyone drunk. You're going to change it from popular commands, to all commands. And then you're going to scroll down until you find speak sales. And you're just going to add it, click on highlight it, and then click on add and add it in. Now, one of the things I find, I use this a lot in Word. I end up pasting a lot of things to Word and letting it read to me, but I also use it in my emails. I use it in Outlook as well, and it's improved the quality of the emails I send out because I tend to type it faster than I think, and I think really fast, so I leave out a lot of words. And this is actually the real file that I used in the Reno shootout, so you should see IT Smart there. You should win by this alone. I did not win that shootout, by the way. I just wanted to point that out. Another thing I want to point out is a lot of us will dump data from SmartList in GP, or we'll occasionally end up with some things that we want to transpose the number of. So in this particular case, this is sales information from SmartList, from GP. And if you've ever dumped anything from SmartList, you know that if you dump out credit memos and payables as well, they come over as positive numbers. And so we always have to stop and reverse the sign. And an easy way to do this, I'm going to come over here on the right, just type in -1, and I'm going to just right mouse click and choose copy. And then in these cells that I want to be transposed or made negative, I'll highlight them all, right mouse click. I'm going to choose paste special. And then instead of using any of these paste options, I'm going to use an operation and choose multiply and click OK. And they'll automatically now show up as negative numbers, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to get rid of this -1 again. And if I were to come back and show everything again, now my invoices have positive numbers, but there's one right there. My credit memos have negative numbers. So a lot of people never paid attention to the fact that you could use operators as part of your paste, and that's how that would work. Another thing that people don't know about is how you can sort columns. They know how to sort rows if you want to sort by like who owes us the most money, by unapplied amount. But sorting columns is, they typically just tend to choose cut and paste or drag and drop. What I did here is I added a row at the top, and in the row I put the order I want these to appear. So I want the vendor name first, then the vendor ID, the document type, and I want applied amount to be the last column. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just select the spreadsheet, and I'm going to go up to data and sort just like you normally would. But what's different this time is instead of sorting by rows the way I'm doing it now, I'm going to choose option and and I'm going to sort left to right instead of top to bottom. And now it's saying, hey, what do I want to sort by? I'm going to choose to sort by row 1, and I'm going to click OK. And now that I've done that, zoom in a little bit. Now my applied column is last. These actually ended up sorting by the column number. So that's a little cool thing you can do. And the last thing I want to do is I have this data spreadsheet here that I've created of I think this is AP information. Yep, I see Beaumont Construction. So this is AP information. And I've created this pivot table that basically shows who I owe money to. Now, this is just a simple pivot table, and one of the things you'll see is I have vendor ID in my filter pane. So I want to do something very kind of cool here that a lot of people don't even know you can do. In my pivot table tools analyze, when you have something in the filter, and you could have more than one thing in the filter if you want. Let's see, I've got vendor ID. I could also put in vendor name in the filter, so now you can see I have 2 filter options there. Let me get that back out. What did I do? What did I do? There we go. Okay. Oh, I ended up moving it. All right, so I have the vendor ID listed right here. One of the things you can do when you have a filter is I'm going to come up to options, and I clicked on the arrow, not the word options, and it brought up this drop-down menu. And one of the things that are brought up is this hidden thing that only shows up when you have a filter, and this is Show Report Page Filter. And when you click on this, it's asking me which filter do I want to use. Now, I only have one thing in my filter, and so I'm going to select it. And the reason why I zoomed back out, I want you to notice my tabs at the bottom. I just have tip 1, 2, 3, and then tip 4 table, tip 4 pivot. When I click OK, watch what happens. And it does this very, very quickly. Because I had vendor ID in the filter, it turned my table into my pivot table into a separate tab for each and every vendor ID, and it put that vendor ID in the filter across the top. And this is not something you can undo. So this is something that before you want to give it to somebody, you want to do a file save as, and then you could give this out to, like if you did this for sales information, you could give this out to all your salespeople. And what a quick and easy way to make that happen. All right, let's move on to my next demo. Now, this is actually one that I've never demoed in an Excel shootout, but this is something I find so super cool. So this is AP information, and I've created this pivot. You can see I have my data. I just pulled it out into a table, and then I created a pivot table that shows the account number, account description, and then the net by year, right? So this is just a little simple pivot table calculation. Now, what I want to do is I want to click on one of these numbers, and I'm going to zoom in on this one, and I'm going to right mouse click. And a lot of people don't pay attention to the show value as, and if they do, they don't notice that there is a difference from. And I'm going to click on that. And what I'm going to do is tell it I want to look at my years, which are my columns, and I want to show the difference from the previous or from a specific year. I'm going to choose from previous. And now what I'm looking at is not the sum of the net, but the difference from the previous year. So there was no year 2017, so that, and right now I'm not showing all the years, so I would definitely want to show all the years. But I could see that this is all just the net change instead of the individual one. And then I could always go back and show no calculation, which would put it back. So that's a pretty cool thing that you could do as well. So that's another one where Mark is going, you didn't show me that, I bet you. And now this is one of my favorite ones. I showed this in Phoenix at the last one. This is a list of comment cards, right? Comment card information. It shows, there's a unique row for each one, but it shows our product and our product name and so forth. But it has these word products. And if I want a way to be able to create graphical images and visualizations that help me analyze this data, I don't want to have to read all these comments because there are over 23,000 of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use machine learning, Azure Machine Learning. And if I go to Insert, there is some add-ons you could get right from the store, but I've already included it in my Excel. I've downloaded it. So I've already got the Excel machine learning add-on. So I'm going to click on this and click on add. And there are two samples out there, and I'm going to use this sentiment analysis one, but there's also a Titanic survivor predictor. So, but I'm going to use the text sentiment analysis. And the first thing it's asking me is what range is the data I want to look in. So all I did was change this to tweet text so that it would match the example. So I'm going to highlight all of these, press F8, and then I'm going to press Control End. And now you can see I've got the whole column, all 23,485 records, including the heading there. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So now I've got all that pulled in. And then now where do I want to put my output? It's going to use two columns for output. So I'm just going to tell it I want column K1 is where I'll start my output, and then I'll click on predict. It is now analyzing the text in all 23,000 records. There are a few that don't have any comments, but it's analyzing all of the text here. And it's assigning a numerical value, and based on that numerical value, it's assigning a sentiment. So here's the numerical value for all of them. And if I look at the sentiment, I can see some are positive, some are negative, and some are neutral. So let's start with a positive one. So I'm going to look over here. And here, I love this dress. And it goes on and talks about how flattering it is. And so that's definitely a positive sentiment. Let's look at the neutral version. And on the neutral version, I can see, all right, wouldn't have given this a second look, but tried it on in the store, loved it, love. So, well, that's actually a little more positive, but it kind of like wouldn't give it a second thought. That's what made it think it was neutral. And then if I go in and look at negative, here we go. And here's one. I'm upset for the price of this dress. So that's definitely a negative sentiment analysis. So looks like I have time for my last one. So I think that's really cool. There's a lot of machine learning things coming down the pike. And this is a new feature. It's actually in the product now because when I showed it, it was still coming out. And Mark was trying to tease me that stuff coming out shouldn't count.
Next time, Belinda.
Oh, it's time? Oh, okay. I won't show that one then. So unless there are no additional questions. So Mark and Shawn, comments on anything I just showed?
I like it. I mean, I still love the reading to you thing. Just as an old accountant, not having to call somebody in and say, I can't find this. Could you just please read this column of numbers to me? I don't have to do that anymore. I have a robot that has taken that job.
Right. And you could actually change the voice too. So that you could choose male or female, or and there's a couple different options. It's funny, Mark, when we were writing the last book, our publisher is out of London, and when they sent me something back with changes, and I went to listen to it, it actually, because of their changes, actually ended up being in a British voice, and that my original content was in American voice, which is kind of funny, but. I do use it for emails all the time. When people write me emails, or especially if I'm writing emails, because I'll leave out words and it'll help me find those. Yeah, that is a good one.
Yeah, and I love the machine learning stuff. I just don't have enough. I don't have enough use cases yet, but I feel like it's coming.
Well, comment cards is definitely a big one because the fact that it's applying scores to them.
Yes.
So that you don't have to read them. You still have
but it is a little narrow still in terms of, for that, it's fantastic. But kind of for that average sort of thing, my average day-to-day Excel use, it's not quite there yet.
Yeah.
But it is impressive how fast it was, right? For 23,000 records to do all that. That was pretty good. Right?
That was pretty darn awesome, wasn't it? That's like lightning fast. And so, yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it too, but I'm super excited about what it can do. And so one of the examples that I've been demoing, because I got excited about it the first time I saw it, which was, I don't know, quite a few years ago. And I even did a summit session on it one year. And so and there were a few people in there who were intrigued about the topic, but the demo I have is about cars. Like if you have a used car lot, trying to figure out how you should price the car based on, does it have 4 doors or 2 doors? Is it considered a sports car? Is it a V8 or a V6? And what color is it? Some of those things will, help, if you use some of that, you can look at what you've sold cars for in the past and help you come up with a price, which was kind of interesting. But I like you, Mark, I am struggling with a little bit more practicality of this. But Amazon is the king of it, because if you buy something at Amazon, you know how it says, hey, other people have bought this same thing. Well, it's not just that other people have bought it. It could look at some of your demographics. So like you live in this.
Well, so just to be, this is kind of my struggle is examples, but today I got something from the AICPA that said, hey, you should become a certified information technology professional, take the exam, blah, blah, blah. I already have that certification and they know it. So why are they emailing me? We can do all this great prediction, but we still fail to bump our marketing up against people who already have our product and send them something different.
Yep.
So, I think some of that's important as we dig through this. Fair
point. So this new thing that I showed today, which have demoed, where I changed the month, year over year change.
Yeah, that's really fun.
That's pretty sweet, isn't it? I mean, that's like one of those hidden little gems.
Well, and it's also nice. I mean, I know I've sort of been stuck on budgets just because that is kind of where that demo went. But to be able to do something like an actual versus budget that way, what's the difference between these two things, or what's the difference year over year between these things? Because for a lot of companies, the core expenses are in a range. And what you're trying to do is I'm trying to understand things that are wildly outside of that range. Last year we spent $2 million on repairs and maintenance, and this year we spent $50,000. That doesn't mean our stuff worked better. It means someone didn't put something in the right spot, and we need to go find it and get it into the right spot.
Right. Yep. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. And a lot of people have seen this out there, but I have, and I've used a couple of these, like running totals and things like that, but I had never looked at the difference from. And I was like, what? Yeah. What? That is crazy. And so, I think that's a pretty exciting little piece of information. And one time I was showing in these 4-tip ones that I did, I was showing this. It was at an Amplify. I think it was the first Amplify. There were a couple people in there who, on 2 different things. One, like reading the numbers, she was like, "Oh, that's going to help me as soon as I get home." But what was the other one? It was me dividing all of this up into these vendors. She was like, someone was mad because they were like, "I just spent hours doing that," and sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. So that was pretty nifty too. So. All right. Can you please provide instruction for the speak cell? Yeah. So, it's pretty simple to do. So, if you were to come back in here, again, adding it in, you would go to more commands, and you need to make sure you go to all commands because it normally won't pop up. And if you find speak sales, it'll start with the word speak. There it is. You could also add speak cells by columns, by rows, or speak cells by inner, which was always kind of fun. So I'll add that one in. So then you highlight it and click on add. And then it'll pop up on the top of your screen. So if you were to wanted to read these 2, or maybe I wanted to read these 2 names, I'll highlight them. I'll click on the icon that was added.
Advanced Office Systems.
And it just speaks until it's done. And don't click it again, otherwise you'll be in this loop. But this one is kind of.
Cells will now be spoken on enter.
So if you click on
Belinda,
that,
we're stealing Shawn's time.
Oh, okay. Yep. All right. If you want more, we have a way to get that at the end. So let me go back to Shawn. So Shawn, why don't you introduce yourself?
So Belinda's stealing my time. I don't know. Accidental, I guess.
It's accidental.
So I am Shawn. I'm Shawn Dord. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm the practice lead at Interdyne Artists, a partner servicing and supporting dynamic ERPs and all of the Power Platform products. Check out my personal blog site, gplifehacks.com, for tips and tricks on GP and also things Excel and Business Central related. So next slide there. I wanted to remind those on the call, we have our own sort of event at the end of April. It's called Vision. It's 2 days. First day is talking about all kinds of cool things, emerging technologies, and Dynamics 365. And on day 2, similar content and focus on Dynamics GP. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead. If you could make me presenter, I'll.
Yep, and as I'm doing that, I want to point out, Shawn, I'm going to be one of the presenters at your Vision this year.
Yeah, we're gonna have a little Power App shootout. Be nice.
Yeah? Cool.
Very good. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Getting a little bit of feedback there. It's a hot mic, I guess. Just my first thing here I want to show is sum array. And sum array is handy with we want the total. Linda, I'm wondering if you would mind muting yourself for me.
Yep. Why, you hear me sipping my iced tea?
Yeah, I think so. So if we wanted to, there we go, thank you so much, get a total here for our price and quantity, we would just use normal sum or calculations and get the total. And then if we wanted the total for all of our widgets, we would come out here and get a total, kind of making the spreadsheet a little sloppy. And the same true if we wanted to go ahead and use the average function, we could just type that out now that we have that total line. But I wanted to show you a cool way to do this with an array sort of in a sum function. So I'm just going to go in my total value and just grab my first set of data. And then I'm going to multiply that. If you just watch my, my view there, and I'm going to multiply that by my second array of data and then just close parentheses on that. And I get the same result as I did up here without having this extra line, which is pretty cool. I find that pretty helpful. Let me just absolute value these guys here, lock them in. And I could do the same thing just by nesting the average. I'm just going to drop it inside this and apply the average to it. So I just got that same information without having the requirements. This is a simple example of how to use the array function, which sort of puts things in memory. You might find this useful depending on your version and what type. You may have to execute it by doing Control-Shift-Enter. In my new version, I did not have to do that. Next one here, I wanted to show some text formatting. This is pretty cool. If you do a lot of scratch work within Excel where you're building the spreadsheet yourself, you get some data that's kind of sloppy. I'm just going to use the upper function and force all the text in that cell to be uppercase naturally. Pretty self-explanatory. The lower. And then one of my favorites here, I really use this quite a bit. Notice it's not just for the first letter, it's for all letters, and you can see that down there. A little bit of kudos to my friends there. And I can use proper to get every letter up, every word uppercase, capitalized, and lowercase afterwards. So that's pretty cool on changing text. For formatting cells, I use this all the time. If you ever get data and you see this data like this and you're, okay, I have to format this, that's a number, I have to format it as a text, oh, that's a text, or maybe the leading zeros gets dropped off. You can use the text function to force consistency among this. Now, naturally, you can use the format from the ribbon, but you would it replaces the actual cell. So this gives us a brand new cell. So I'm going to use the required field or the required argument value. I'm pointing to my cell, and then naturally the format text. This is where it gets a little fun. I'm just going to open quote and use zeros as placeholders, and I want this to be 5 digits long. Any value from B3 gets inserted. Other than that, it gets padded with a 0. This is sort of like left padding, and if I just slide that down, look at how nice that looks. And I can change this. I can add a space and use a question mark for maybe a variable. Another space and maybe another 0, so I can get a little bit fancy with this if I wanted to, but that's a great way to left pad. I like that. Another thing you can do, I came across this recently, and I know you can use the format, but I wanted to show this, how to use the text command to format into a fraction. So we'll just use text. I'll highlight my cell that I want to format, quote, I'm going to indicate the number, force the number there, question mark, backspace, question mark, close quote. It's just easy, I promise. And then you see I get my actual format into a fraction. That's pretty sweet. I like that a lot. Next up here is joining data. We probably all do this. We use concatenate like it's the only function available to men. But if I want to join these 3 cells here, what I can't do with concatenate is I can't just use the array. I can't drag and drop. It lets me do it, but as you can see with the results, it still kind of breaks it up and treats it like a smart window there. There's another function called concat that does specifically allow you to drag and drop and treat it as a join in one cell. But what I don't like about it is it doesn't offer any delineation variables. So because of that, we generally go back to concatenate and put in our, fancy formula here, concatenate A2, then we want a space, dash space, quote, B2, so then you get this really cumbersome formula. Makes you feel like an Excel champ because it works. It does look good, but text join, which you may not know about, I recently learned about this. It's pretty new. All I'm going to do is tell it what I want to delineate the text with. And then do I want to ignore empty cells here? I'm going to say no, false. And then I just pick my data. And just like that, I get it all delineated. Oops, I picked the whole table. That's okay. And now I have it real nice and easy without my cumbersome formula here using concatenate. That's a little bit about joining data, separating data. I was going to show some search functions. I'll include that in the file, but this text to columns is pretty cool. So I'm just going to highlight this. If I want to break this all out, I'm going to go to the data tab, go to text to columns. This opens up my convert text to columns window. So if you've ever done sort of mid left this, right, mid, all those kind of crazy things, consider using this function because all I have to do is tell it, look, my delineator is the dash and I want it to start in cell B4 so it doesn't overwrite my data. And now I have it all separated. And just like another good example is for when you use separating names. So here it would be a comma, but notice that space there. All I can do is include that space as another delineator and it drops it for me. So I really like this text to columns. So check that out. Moving on to dates. I work with a lot of financial spreadsheets and dates are or can be my worst nightmare. So I wanted to show some of the cool ways to format dates in Excel. So the function across the top here for you, I'm just going to use that and say equals day. My argument is just 1, point to where I want to get my serial number from. And just like that, I get the day from that date. Month is very similar. And if you're paying attention, you're going to know what year means. Those are pretty easy, pretty helpful though as well. So we just drag that down and we have all that information. Now, EDate is I have a little note here. This is going to move the date months or months into the future for us. So if I want to say I want to move my date column there 1 month ahead, I would use my argument start date and put a number 1 in there. If I wanted to take it 1 month backwards, I would put a -1 in there, which is what I'm going to do here. So what I love about this is it takes it back 1 month, but it's relative. So on the 31st of, actually, let me do 1 month ahead. And I did 11, which is probably why that didn't work the way I intended it to. Yep. So we'll just do 1 on the 31st of December. You see there is no November 31st. So it notices, hey, that's the end of the month and automatically does that for us. Days of the week, if you like to, this is another one of those text formats. If you want to actually know what day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we can go ahead and grab and point the text function to the cell and use a quote D to indicate day. So if I just do that with 1D, I get the number value. Since it's just 1D, when it gets to a single digit number, they're just single digits. If I put 2 in there, nothing changes on the double digits, but notice it forces my numbers to be out and consistent. Now 3 now gives me the actual text version, and then 4 is the full day of the week. I love that. That's pretty cool. So that is using the text format. Then we have a function called days, not day, but days. And what this does is it tells you the difference in days between one date and the other. Alexa can do this for you too, I've learned recently, which is pretty cool. So that's just simple, saying, hey, the number of days between this and that one. And then network days, which I really, my Alexa literally just answered to me. So my network days function.
Well, quit saying Alexa, Shawn.
My network days function does that same thing, except we want to do it just for our work days. And that'll exclude weekends and even holidays if we want. So I'm just going to highlight my start date here, use my second argument, my end date. And just like that, it's going to say, hey, there's 11 work days between those two dates. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Pretty cool. If I had the need to exclude holidays, there's another argument, an optional argument. All I have to do is point to a list of holidays that I want to exclude, and it's going to do that all in the same for me. Notice this holiday here, if I delete it, my number doesn't change. I'm still at 8, and that's because that holiday was on a weekend. So it's pretty cool. That's net days. And then the last one is end of month. That's the function EO month, and you just point to a cell and it will take you to the last day of the month. In this case, I want to do the current month, which is 0. So that's a bit about dates. Real quick, sort. I love sorting data. Who doesn't? We use the filter or the sort, but one thing, each has their own limitations. The sort here, if I wanted to sort by my middle column, my second column, my first column, my third column, descending, ascending, and then descending again, that's great. It does that for me, just like that. But notice here where it's Belinda red, I wanted my amounts descending, so if I were to put a 40 here, nothing happens. It's not dynamic. What we can use is a pretty new function called sort. So I'm just going to type out equals sort, and I'm going to pick my array, my data set, and I'm going to tell my index in the squiggly brackets here, that's the technical term. I want to sort the second column first, the first column after that, then the third column. And then I have to add another argument for sort order. It's optional. That's why they're in brackets, by the way. If you ever see arguments in brackets, that's their optional. I want to sort my second column descending, my first column ascending, and my third column descending. Close that up, and if I don't make a mistake, I use the square brackets. I got to use the squigglies here. I get an immediate sort. So notice my colors were descending as I asked, and then when they're the same, like Belinda and Taylor here, it's ascending. And then when those are the same, my values are descending. So now if I change the 70 to 30, if you watch these two rows, they will dynamically switch for me, which is awesome. Woohoo, that's awesome. One more thing you could do about this if you love Excel and you're not necessarily all that versed in Power BI just yet, is you can come into your Excel and upload that right to your Power BI and experience and utilize this spreadsheet on your Power BI application.
You're stomping on my territory.
Right here.
You're stomping on my territory right now.
What? Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't get to, I think that was time, but I didn't get to index and match, which you'll love, but we'll check it. You could check it out in the file. It's a replacement for VLOOKUP. Pretty cool stuff. So sorry I ran over, but that is our time.
I love that sort function. That's pretty darn cool.
Yeah, I do too.
Very cool. I did not know that. And go back to where you did your concatenations, where you were joining things, joining data. I wrote down text join. I didn't know that was there.
I've been using this one a lot lately. You know, when we work with integrations and you're trying to get data, this is a relatively new function as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that one.
Can I go to your concat formula on A10? Yeah, okay.
One thing you have to be careful of, backward compatibility. If you use concat instead of concatenate, someone on an older version is not going to be able to use it. So
Right. I just tend to use the and symbol when I'm sticking stuff together.
yeah.
Right. Mark, I wonder if you asked to see this because of the spaces. There are actually spaces at the end of these texts.
No, I really just wanted to see. I missed that as you were zipping through of what you had in there. So
Very cool.
very, very nice stuff.
Yeah. Wow. Let's see. No additional comments. We're actually 6 minutes over, probably because of me.
That's okay. We had fun.
That's
This is a
pretty.
great webinar.
That's awesome. I got excited about Inquire again, and this was pretty cool. I love the way you had the chart all populate.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, and you used your tree there. I love that you used the tree. So that's pretty cool. So nifty.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Nifty. All right, I'm gonna launch the next poll question that we have, and
Then we'll get out of here.
then we'll let everyone go home. So you guys can see the poll question. Did you learn anything new today? All right, so only about half the people have voted so far, but more than half, almost 2/3. All of them said yes so far. That's awesome.
I learned something today, so that's all that really matters.
I did too. I should probably answer it. So that's awesome. Not a single no. That is pretty darn cool. So I'm going to close that poll question down. And let's see, come back over here, and we just did our poll question. So one other thing I want to offer everybody is if you want more information on anything that you saw, like Mark's historical aged reports, and trust me, those are worth every penny. You could do them yourself, but not for the time it takes, or not for the cost he charges them. So they're pretty low cost. So if you want information about that, or you want information about Interdyne's Vision Conference, which I'm going to be at, or if you want to talk about more information on taking GP to the cloud, or anything that you saw today, just jot it in the chat. We'll look at that after it's over. And beyond that, I think we are done. So this is us. We appreciate you guys joining in and hanging around and watching something that we're passionate about. So this was fun. We should do something like this again.
You mean like a podcast?
Yes, like a free podcast. We definitely, life got in the way for all of us, and particularly me, and so my apology, but we're going to have our podcast up.
I was going to say it was mostly Shawn's fault at the beginning, but
yeah, we'll blame Taylor.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. It's Taylor's fault. So, yeah. Anyhow, we had a great time today. So thank you, everybody, for attending. So, Mark, I don't know. I know that Shawn is going to post this in the Interdyne Artist webinars. We're going to post it in the Ingevity webinars. Are you going to post the recording of this anywhere?
Potentially, yes, but I don't have an answer to that yet.
Okay, so he'll let you know if he ends up doing that. Otherwise, everyone have a great new year, and come and see me next week in Tampa.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.